Good morning, everybody. My name is Scott Stanfield, and this is The Modern Longevitarian. Today's show is one of my favorite topics. I'm so excited to get to there. First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody watching on Spirituality Gone Wild, and also checking in with us on LinkedIn. As you know, LinkedIn is a application-only process. You may not know this. Application-only process, not just anybody can go live, and there's no live button there. You have to use a third-party streaming software, which is where we're at. And just want to say thank you for being here. I'm starting a group, right? So come work with me. I'm starting a new group training for January, and it's going to be with a primary focus on weight loss, which is what we normally do this time of year, where we stop drinking alcohol, which is a new fad that's come on with January, but we kind of like try to reset. And what happens is, though, as a longevitarian, it's not like your normal resolution that's going to lose steam and burn out, flame out, and stop somewhere between Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's, right? This is more about the long run. This is the tortoise. This is not the hare, right? This is not a 90-day transformation program. This is more about resetting yourself for the long haul, the long run, and becoming a longevitarian, living in this modern world that's filled with all the toxins and stress and day-to-day life stuff that they didn't have 100 years ago. So anyway, just wanted to bring that up and let you know. So reach out to me, either send me a private message or drop a comment here. And I want to say also thank you to my friends over at Real Salt Redmond. There's a link in some of the comments already where you can click on there and get some real salt that's mined here in Utah. And my guest today, Todd Sylvester, is in Salt Lake, and we've been connected on LinkedIn for a long time. And he reached out to me right when the show first started, said, I'd love to be on. And so I'm going to, let's just move to this and go ahead and get going. Todd, welcome to The Modern Longevitarian.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, it's amazing. You had me, and I said this yesterday when we were on the phone, you had me at your beliefs dictate your actions. So Tell me how you, let's just guess, how'd you get started in being a personal coach? You got 2 books coming out. You're mentoring people. How did you get started in all this?
That's a great question. And I always answer it this way. I'm doing what I'm doing now because I took my first sip of alcohol when I was 11 years old. And I had no idea the road that was going to take me down. And, because of almost a 10-year addiction to alcohol and drugs, and being fortunate enough to overcome that and not dying through that process, since then, I've been helping people not have to go through what I've gone through, or if they're stuck in what I was going through, helping them find the exit out of that. And so for the last 31 years, I've been clean and sober now for 31 years. And I've been, like you said, I've been helping people since then. And it's, to me, it's the greatest job on the planet.
It is rewarding. I mean, when you help people, like for me, I've helped, so many people lose weight, live healthier lives, stretch out their hamstrings so their foot's not hurting, right? I mean, just so many different things, right?
Right.
And understanding those type of connections. And, I haven't really talked about this online ever anywhere, but in high school, I was drinking a lot. There was a lot of
Yeah.
partying going on. And then you don't know my story, but when I got sponsored to race go-karts, when I got an official sponsorship from this like one of the best kart shops in the entire country, which happened to be in my city, and my dad happened to know the owner since he was in high school, so it was like this thing that kind of worked out for me. But I had to prove myself. It wasn't given to me by any means. Stopped cold turkey. Stopped drinking cold turkey. Stopped everything because I was like, this is my chance.
Right.
And ironically, when I was 21, I didn't drink alcohol, right? I didn't,
Yeah.
I'd stopped drinking already by the time I turned 21, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty rare,
Yeah. It is
you
rare,
know,
right? And
for
then I was
someone who started as early as you did, you know?
right, right. Yeah. And I didn't start as early as you by any means, right? And my heart breaks to hear the story where you or anybody that starts that young and has to go through this road of breaking an addiction at such an early age. And so
Yeah.
I commend you for being able to do that, and then also sharing your
Thank you.
story with that. you
Yeah.
know
No, I
and,
feel very fortunate, to be in this position. I know a lot of people who are caught up in that don't make it out. They either end up in prison or they die, and it's unfortunate. And again, I feel very blessed to be in this position, and I almost feel like I have a responsibility to help other people through this process.
mm, it's there's been times before, because I've worked in restaurants for almost 30 years, right? And one of the things you're concerned about is, I mean, we're trained to determine if people have been consuming alcohol, right, or impaired in
Right.
any type of way, right? Because
Yeah.
we can't overserve people, right? We're trained in that. And I've had people show up to work, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm like, this person smells like booze, and I have to
Yeah.
like, it's like, okay, is this from last night? Did you just wake up an hour ago and throw on the clothes from last night and show up to work, right? Or have they been drinking today? Is it a fresher smell, right? Those type of things. Or is deeper because I'm, been the GM or director of food and beverage, I may not see them till there's hours into the shift. Or they
Right.
actually like drinking on the job, right? And so I'm having to determine those things. And there's been times where I'm like, hey man, or guy or gal, right? You smell like booze a little bit. Did you have a good time at the bar last night? I'm trying to figure out what's going on because floors are slippery and all these type of things, right? And through some of those questioning processes, not trying to like say, hey, you're stealing from me or you're doing those type of things. I've had people go to rehab, because they realize it's like,
Right.
hey, Scott can smell last night on me, even though I took a shower and I got cologne on and all those type of things, right? And so
Yeah.
it's been an eye-opening thing, and so indirectly in ways I've helped some people, with that, being concerned about their safety while they're at work, right? With
Sure.
that, yeah.
Sure.
So but and it wasn't my intention, but it was definitely an amazing outcome for those times, those things to happen.
Yeah.
um and so let's just dig right in, right? Let's just dig right into this.
Okay.
Beliefs dictate your behaviors. This is like, like what David Bayer would say, mindset 2.0, right? We were taught all
Right.
this time in the first part of the evolution was,
Yeah.
this, where we're just had to be aware, just got to have self-awareness, but we didn't know what to do with the things we became aware of. So
Right.
to, let's just like dig right in, you know, and I'm like lost. This is the beauty of being live, right? I'm gonna start stuttering and lose my lose my place and all that stuff, right? But
Yeah.
your beliefs dictate your behaviors.
Yeah. And that's a very powerful principle. And a principle is something that's true and constant. It's like a law. It's like the law of gravity. Gravity's working 24/7. It's the same thing. Beliefs dictate our behavior. It's working 24/7, whether we realize it or not. And so if you ever want to change behavior, you have to change the belief. And going back on my story and my upbringing, I got wrapped up in drugs and alcohol, but I didn't know it then. But what was really going on is I was poisoning myself with my own irrational limiting beliefs. And there's an experience I had when I was in 7th grade. I was up in my bedroom and I was just, I can't remember exactly what I was doing, but I overheard my mom and her friends laughing in the kitchen on how skinny I was. I was a very skinny kid. And I knew that, and it didn't really bother me at all, honestly. But when I heard them laughing, and it wasn't malicious, they're just like, "Oh yeah, he's so skinny," and it was just one of those things. But I'll tell you, it crushed me, Scott. When I heard that, I was like, the belief I picked up or I grabbed onto was I look funny. And so when I'd walk around the hallways at school, if I heard anyone laughing, I would automatically go to, they're laughing at me because I look funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you this, and this led to insecurity, and every kid on some level, as we grow up, we go through this process of what we call life where, we weren't born insecure, but then we somehow learn that as we get older when we go through certain experiences. And so seventh grade is when I really started noticing this belief system and how it was really dictating the way I would behave. And this obviously fueled my addiction and along with some other beliefs. But it's interesting, when I'm dealing with my clients who are, for instance, are slamming heroin, I don't have to tell them to stop doing heroin. They already know that. What we need to figure out is what's the belief that's fueling that behavior. And when we can get to that belief and expose it for what it really is, that it's actually not even true, right? But they believe it. And so what you have to do is help them realize that this is something that's feeding this behavior that you're doing. If you want to change that behavior permanently, and even if it's addiction, it's amazing how powerful our beliefs can become. So, that's kind of was my first taste of that when I was younger. And that's one of the main things I do with my clients today is help them realize these things.
Right. Some of the most common beliefs are, I'm not good enough. Life is hard. You got to work hard to make money. It takes money to make money. Making money's hard.
Yeah.
I'm like, those type of things, right? Like yours is, like I look funny. There's all kind of derivatives of that, right? It's like I'm a skinny kid, I'm a fat kid, I'm a weak kid, I'm a slow kid, those type of things, right?
Well, sorry, I was going to add to what you're saying. In my 31 years of experience in doing this, the three top limiting beliefs I hear consistently in my world is number one is I'm not good enough. I think everyone listening to this right now can relate with that on some level. Number two is I'm different, so I can't connect. Somehow I'm so different than everyone else, I can't connect with other people. And then the third one is my problems are too big, too detailed that it's impossible to change. Okay. And then I like to add maybe a fourth one is ultimately there's something wrong with me. And those beliefs are the ones that I see most often. It's the ones I struggled with the most growing up. It's some that I still wrestle with even today. I've got to, sometimes wrestle with those and remind myself that I'm telling myself a lie. And so it's very important. The narrative that we have in our head, the way we speak to ourselves matters. And it matters immensely. And it matters whether we're experiencing joy or if we're experiencing misery. It is all based on the story we're telling ourselves.
Right. And this story we're telling ourselves could come through an experience like you had with your mom and your aunt, right? Is that who it was, right?
Well, my mom and some friends. Yeah.
And some friends, right?
Yep.
And it could come from something like that. It couldn't come from, it could come from, like, a situation where like if you're young in your life and your parents, have some financial problems, like in your first, 6 years of your life, you could then have these really weird things about money, right?
Exactly.
Going on, right? Or like, for instance, my dad drove a truck for, 35 years. My mom was a lunch lady and then drove a bus, right?
Right.
So I guess there's no secret why I love racing cars and driving and around food, right? I mean, those are the things, right?
Yeah.
And then my mom would taught aerobics, right? This maybe where some of my health and exercise things came from, and was into like a macrobiotic diet. She did it. Had the book right around. Wasn't like she really did it in a lot of ways.
Right.
And so so for me, it's like for years it was like a belief that I had. Like, well, how'd you make it in restaurants? How'd you go from dishwasher to manager in 90 days? Oh, I bring a blue collar work ethic to to being a general manager, right? I didn't, I grew up, this way, right? And so there's a belief, right? That
Yeah.
you have to work hard, right? The more money you make, the harder you have to work to deliver the return on the investment that your bosses are putting into you, right?
Right.
But you don't realize that actually at some point you're getting paid for your brain power, not your physical body power, right?
Yeah.
As you get
Absolutely.
more experience, right? Those type of things. And so, as you can see, I've done some wrestling too, right?
Sure.
with these things, and I've had um, you know some serious life coaching, right, for just over 2 years, right? And this is one of the things where the formula I was taught was the TFAR: thoughts, feelings, equal, thoughts plus feelings plus actions equal results. But beliefs are what determines your thoughts, right? Right. So you're actually a precursor to what I was originally taught, right, with your belief system. So how does someone go about, okay, we're aware of these, now we're becoming aware of these thoughts, right? These top four you said, right? I'm not
Right.
enough. These problems are too big, too detailed, I'm different, I can't connect, those type of things. Now that we become aware of this, what's the next step?
Yeah, that's a great question, Scott. So, you know, again, all of us have this negative narrative in our head, whether we want to admit it or not. But one of the first things we need to do is identify this negative narrative, what it is, literally writing it down, the bullet pointed list. As a matter of fact, one of my clients agreed to let me share. You guys don't know who he is, but he said I could share this with you guys today. Here was his negative narrative that he identified on paper. And I won't read the whole thing because you can see it's really long, but I'm
Right.
just going to read a few of these things because this will put it in perspective. Here's what he said: I'm useless. I'm stupid. I'm fat. I'm drunk. I'm weak. I'm an addict. I'll never amount to anything. I should have never been born. I'm a worthless junkie. I'm not strong enough. I can't love anyone properly. I'm unlovable. Life will chew me up. I'm unteachable. I'm can't hold down a job. I'm not a grown progressive member of society. I'm a terrible son. My arms aren't big enough. I'm poor. And the list just goes on. And
Mm.
it's a very vicious list. But this was the narrative that was fueling not only he was a heroin addict, so it was fueling the heroin addiction, but it was fueling everything else too: the lying, the cheating, the stealing. And this was what was dictating his behavior. And so
Mm.
what he did is he had to first identify what the narrative is. And this is not the funnest assignment because you can get really emotional about this and it brings up a lot of negative feelings. But if you don't know what the issue is, how can we fix it? Right? So identifying it basically exposes the enemy, so to speak. And
Mhm.
then what I have my clients do, and I do this myself, is I have them flip the negative and add their name and write that down.
Mhm.
And believe it or not, this guy's name was actually Scott, not you, Scott. But
Right.
here's what he said. I'll just read a few of them just to get an idea for your listeners. I, Scott, am brilliant. I, Scott, am intelligent. I, Scott, am athletic. I, Scott, am positive. I, Scott, am strong beyond measure. I, Scott, am a masterful of my own fate. I, Scott, am an amazing person. I, Scott, am terrific. I mean, and then the list goes on, right?
Mhm.
Well, as he's writing these down, he doesn't believe them, okay, which is understandable.
Right.
But he had to start somewhere because here's the thing: repetition deepens the impression. Or,
Mm.
in other words, repetition creates the new neural pathway or the new belief system.
Right.
So his belief system was all that negative stuff. Well, in order to turn the Titanic, man, it's going to take a while. So he had to start saying something positive in the other direction, even though he didn't believe it on some level, right? So repetition, I think we take it for granted because how did the belief system get formed in the first place? Was negative repetition. And I've got a couple stories that I can share with you if we have time. I'd love to share with your listeners the power of this narrative and changing it and how it can change your life. But
Well,
that's
let's do it.
really where
Yeah.
we start.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing because those seeds get planted, right?
Yeah,
Those thoughts get planted, right? And like, okay, money's hard to make, right? It gets planted, and then basically it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Or
yeah,
I'm not strong enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not a good son, right? And that if
yeah,
you keep thinking that, you keep, you keep, thinking that, acting on it, it's in your head every day. Because Joe Dispenza says, 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day we all have, and 95% of them the same as yesterday, right?
Yeah.
So he's having 100% of those original thoughts every day, and you think if you have 70,000 thoughts a day, at 5%, or, that's a lot of thoughts that could be new, right?
Yeah.
But 95% are the same over and over and over every single day,
Yeah.
and we just play these patterns over and over and over.
Yep.
Right. Like for me,
Absolutely.
like one that like doesn't make any sense. And we'll get into a story. I'd love to hear, the stories. It's like I wrote a book on sleep, right? And it's called Outstanding Landing: How to Get the Sleep of Your Dreams. And the opportune time, the best time to drink your first cup of coffee is 90 minutes after you wake up. And I know this, but the first thing that I do when I wake up is go to the bathroom and then go make a cup of coffee. It's nowhere near 90 minutes away.
Right.
I
Yeah.
consciously know the best time physically and by science, proven by science, to drink a cup of coffee, but I don't do it because I'm not ready to break that habit yet. Right.
Right.
And so it just plays in me. Or
No doubt.
you
Yeah.
know, we get programmed that when we work out, we need protein. Right. And so it's like it's these things these run inside of us, right? Or something happens and you're like, see, I'm not a good son, or I'm not strong enough, I'm not this, I'm not that. It proves it right, becomes these self-fulfilling prophecies,
Exactly. Yeah.
of course. And it would, so, all right, I'm super excited to hear. I love storytelling. So go ahead and tell us what's happening.
No, thank you. And the reason why, because this proves the point of that we're trying to make on this live show today, your show, Scott. So here's an experience I had about a year and a half ago. I got the opportunity to speak at the Utah State Prison. And I've spoken several times at the Salt Lake Detention and Decker Lake, and I'm familiar with that kind of area in life with dealing with criminals, honestly. But
Right.
I have never spoken at the prison, and I'll be honest with you, I was a little nervous, right?
Mhm.
So I go out there to the prison, out there. You got to go through the gates, and you got to go through the metal door. I got to go through a metal detector. They did a background check on me. When I get there, there's 3 guards, right? And they pull me aside and they just kind of give me the lay of the land. And one of them says, okay, if something goes down, make sure you're by one of us. And I'm like, is there something going to go down? Why are you telling me this? Right. And he's like, no, we just have to tell you this. Anyway, I walk into the gymnasium at Promontory out there at the Utah State Prison, and they've got a center block gymnasium. It's not very big, but I walk in there, and in the back of the room, there's 120 inmates in there.
Mm.
And I have to walk all the way to the front, and they're all eyeballing me. And I'm just like, wow, what are these guys thinking about me right now? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I sit down and they want me to spend an hour and 15 minutes sharing my story. But before I go, they have 3 inmates go before me, and they each get 5 minutes to share their story. So I listened to these 3 inmates, and it was amazing. I kid you not, these inmates were crying. They were listening. And I'll tell you, I was like, man, they really set the stage for me. So I get up there, I start sharing my story with these guys, and I just knew I had these guys in the palm of my hand. We were connected. It was so powerful. And then I had this impression come over me to ask him this question. I asked him, how many of you in here are criminals? Every hand goes up, and they're like looking at me like, dude, we're in freaking prison. What do you think?
Right.
And I said, as their hands were raised, I said, why are you lying to yourselves? Why? And the hands start to slowly kind of go down. I go, every one of you are lying right now. And I said, by the show of hands, how many of you committed a crime today? Raise your hand. Not one hand goes up, Scott.
Mm.
And then I said, how many of you committed a crime yesterday? Raise your hand. Not one hand goes up. I go, see, you're lying to yourselves. Then I asked him these questions. How many of you in here have been honest today so far? It looked like every hand went up. I'm sure there might have been 1 or 2 that didn't go up, but every hand looked like went up. Then I said, how many of you have done the right thing today when no one was looking? Every hand goes up. How many of you have shown respect to your cellmate today? Every hand goes up. How many of you have followed the rules today? Every hand goes up. And I said, see, you're lying to yourselves. See, because you just told me you guys are honest, you have integrity, you're caring, and you're respectful. But you want to tell yourselves that you're criminals. And then I said, what follows I am follows you. Scott, Had I not been there, I wouldn't have believed it. I got a standing ovation for 3 minutes.
Wow.
These guys stood up and were literally screaming and clap. And I'm like sitting up there going, is this really happening? I mean, I'm getting emotional. I had a guy waving his arms and I'm like, what? He goes, can I come give you a hug? I said, sure. So he comes, gives me this hug. And then they finally sit down. And I'm not kidding you. It went for 3 minutes. I was like, this is ridiculous.
Right.
And then I said, the most powerful force in the human psyche is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves.
Mm.
So I said, stop calling yourselves criminals and start calling yourself honest, integrous, caring, respectful. I go, because that's the truth.
Mm.
After it was over, all 120 inmates came up and shook my hand and said, we have never heard that before. They have a therapist that's there 24/7. This female therapist that happened to be there on her shift said, I am never going to let these criminals call themselves criminals again, because you're right. They're human beings who have made some mistakes, right? But it was so fascinating that those beliefs that they're a criminal, guess what happens? They call it the revolving door, right? They leave prison. What do? They come right back. Why? Because they believe they're criminal.
Right. Well,
But it's a lie.
95%. 95% they go to prison, go back.
Exactly. And it's because they believe the narrative. That's who I am. I'm a criminal. That's who I am. So it was such a powerful experience. And so for your listeners, again, the most powerful force in the human psyche is the story you tell yourself about yourself. So we got to be really careful with that narrative. We got to work on it, right? So that's the first story I wanted to share with you, and hopefully that made sense.
It does. Actually, I got chills. I still have them, right?
Yeah,
So
it was amazing.
that is amazing. You know, that is so profound, the question of why are you lying to yourself, right? I have never heard it put that way. And trust me, I've done lots of work and lots of podcast listening to like some of the big names, right? You know, that talk about this space, right?
Yeah.
You know, what we you know, this also flashes back to the story of Napoleon Hill when he met with Rockefeller, right?
Yep.
And he was told to go back and look in the mirror every day for 30 days and tell himself the story, you know, or this affirmation that, you know, not only will I catch you, but I'll pass you at the post, and, you know, and those type of things. He didn't believe it, right?
Yeah.
And so it goes back to, I mean, this is nothing new, right?
Well, and here's the thing, Scott. Most people won't do it because one, affirmations seem kind of silly, and two, it's too simple. My problems are so big, and you want me to do affirmations? And so what people do is, you know, if they do them for a little bit, then they quit doing them. Like, I'm doing good, I'm fine. But it's those that stick it out. It's those that fight through it. And you mentioned it in your introduction, where, you know, when you set goals, you got to be in it for the long haul, not just for a little bit, right? It's the difference between motivation and drive. Motivation is an emotion. It comes and goes. You know, people might feel motivated after listening to this today. They might feel like leave and go, yeah, but motivation starts to go down. So this is where drive has to kick in. This is where you dig deep within your soul to go, okay, I am going to do the thing I know I should do, even when that's the last thing I want to do today. That's drive. But what's cool about drive is a skill. The more you do tap into that, the stronger you get with that drive. So yes, you can be motivated, which is great, but it goes away. Drive is internal. It's in you. You're built with it. Like, you were born with the will to never give up. It's in your DNA. So we need to tap into that. And when we do, we can do anything. It's amazing.
Yeah, this is getting into the mental faculty of will, right? Willpower is external, but your internal drive is your will to do something,
Exactly.
right? And which is, you know, what my original course by my life coach, we went over the 6 mental faculties, and will was one. Imagination, right? We can imagine any life we want. And ironically, as I was, making, some working last night, writing some, I just had a podcast on, I was listening to it, and it ended and it went to the next one, which I was already halfway through, and it happened to be the Bulletproof Radio podcast. And it was Jack Canfield, of all people, right?
Yeah.
And he
He's
does
amazing.
great work in this area,
For
right?
sure.
And he was in the movie The Secret and those type of things. And it, and I guess I couldn't have had, much better prep for this show than to listen to that. Right. And it was just playing in the background. I wasn't really like paying attention until something popped up. I'm like, wait a minute, that's new. But I'm really intrigued with this, why you're lying to yourself. Cause that could even be, like, a question that we, when we become aware of something, like, wait a minute, this is like, oh yeah, see that happened, right? See, I'm not good enough, right? And then it could be like when we become aware, we could just like as a trigger, why am I lying to myself, right? I
Yeah.
am good enough, right? I am
Yeah.
this, I am that, right? And you can change that stuff.
Yeah. And one of the things I do in that moment, Scott, and I'm glad you brought that up, I call it the 3 R's: recognize, refuse, replace. Recognize the negative, irrational, untrue thought,
Mm-hmm.
and then refuse it. Like, that's not me. That's not who I am. And then 3, replace it. Like,
Mm,
so for instance, if the thought comes in, I'm stupid, I recognize there's the thought, then I objectify it. That's not me. Okay.
right.
That's that negative voice that is not Todd. And then I say, I, Todd, am brilliant.
Mm,
I may not fully believe that when I first tried doing this, but again, it's a technique that is powerful. It's a technique that a lot of Olympic athletes use as part of their training. So
mm.
you recognize, refuse, and replace it. You start doing that in those moments when those things come up. It's pretty amazing the results that you'll get from that.
It is. So you said you had a couple stories. Do you have that second story
Yeah,
dialed up? Ready to
so
give
I
that?
wanted to, again, this is again going back to the power of belief, and many of you have probably have heard this story. And it's funny, I just shared this with my process group right before I got on here with you, Scott. And it's the story of Roger Bannister.
Mm,
Roger Bannister is the first human being to run a mile under 4 minutes. And before he did that, human beings in this world believed that it was impossible for any of us to run that fast. And if we did, our heart would burst. You couldn't do it, right? But Roger Bannister, if you read and study up on his story, he's like, no, I'm going to be the first one to do this. And there was a couple other guys around the world that were trying that as well. But he was the first one back in April of 1954.
mm,
He runs a mile under 4 minutes. First human being to ever do it, right? Guess what happened all over the world when that happened, right? People
right.
everywhere started doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And since then, up to this date, I think it's well over 20,000 people have now run a mile under 4 minutes. Even high school kids are doing it, right?
Mm,
And what changed was the belief. See, people said, "Oh, I guess human beings can run that fast." And so it's like now they get to that starting line, they have a different belief that, okay, I can actually do this now. Someone just did it. They have proof. And so what's interesting about this story is Roger changed the whole cultural belief of the planet. That he's like,
mm,
people started going, oh, I guess you can do it. And so that barrier of 4 minutes wasn't real.
mm,
It was just someone placed that barrier. Well, human beings can't run that fast. It's impossible.
right.
It was a self-made barrier. So when Roger breaks through that imaginary barrier, then everyone else starts doing this. And that just goes to show, I love this story because it proves how powerful belief is. And what's interesting, his record lasted for 46 days.
Mm,
Can you imagine you're the first one that does it? And then 46 days later, you'd probably maybe hope, okay, I hope this goes on for the next 5-10 years. But
right.
46 days later, someone breaks his record. And
Mm,
so I love sharing that story with my clients, and because it proves the power of belief, right?
right.
And so the more we tell ourselves something positive, the more we're going to start believing it, the more we're going to start acting it. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because I think it proves the point.
It does. So my first question is, well, first thing is that I love that story, and there's so many Roger Bannisters for me in the world, and I could list
Yeah,
them off, right?
for sure.
And so, like, if I had to ask you, like, like list, give me like your top 3 Rogers Bannisters that have made differences in your life. Whose names would you throw out there?
Oh, number one easily is JC Dugard.
Mm,
JC Dugard was kidnapped when she was 11 years old by a sexual predator and viciously raped in a shed for 18 years. She
mm,
was fortunately found after everyone thought was dead, right? And she was asked, "Do you hate the guy that did this to you?" She said no.
mm,
And this woman, JC Dugard, she doesn't if she was a suicidal drug addict, alcoholic train wreck, we'd all give her a pass.
Right.
She's none of those things. And here's my favorite line from her. And this is why JC's my hero. She
Mm,
really is. She says, I choose not to wallow in self pity.
mm,
She made a decision to not let what this guy did to her dictate her future. She didn't buy into that garbage that she had to go through, right? She was even asked, if you could change this, would you? She said no. And then asked why. Because I get to help millions of people all over the world now, especially women who have been sexually abused. And so it's so fascinating to me. Here's this person locked in a shed for 18 years, and yet she can rise above it. She can believe in herself. She can do anything she wants because she didn't let this take her down to, believing that she wasn't good enough, or that she was somehow going to be broken the rest of her life because she was in captivity for so long.
mm,
So JC Dugard's at the top of that list. She's truly one of my favorites. My if a close second is James Allen. He's
mhm,
one of my favorite people. He wrote the book As a Man Thinketh.
mhm,
I really believe that that's the greatest book ever written when it comes to our thinking.
mhm.
And to prove to you that he's my hero, I have this book here called Mind is the Master. Look how thick it is.
Wow.
And you can see I've got paper clips, marks. I've marked this book up. This has
Wow.
been my Bible for the last 6 years.
Mhm,
I have been studying. It took me 6 years to get through of all of James Allen's writings.
mhm.
And it's fascinating. He's truly one of my heroes as well, because that book, As a Man Thinketh, when I was at the height of my addiction, my dad, and here's the actual official book, gave me this book. My grandparents gave this to my dad, and you can't maybe see this, in
Right.
1964.
Wow.
I did what every good kid would do when my dad gave this to me. I threw it on the shelf and left it there.
Mhm.
Well, when I was finally getting clean and trying to improve my life, I picked up this book and I started reading this, and I could not believe what I was reading. I'm like, how did this guy know in 1903 this information?
Right.
And so this James Allen is truly one of my heroes, and it's someone I've learned a ton from. And then there's so many amazing people out there. I mean, Napoleon Hill, and, Tony Robbins, and Dennis Waitley, and Andy Andrews. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so, but these people are the people that I look to for guidance and help.
Right. I probably could, if I actually sat down, there'd probably be a list of like 47 people that I would,
Yeah, easily. Yeah.
yeah, that have broken something along the way for me. But I wanted to take a quick break here. We had a comment come in from Joy. She's watching on LinkedIn. Recognize, refuse, replace. I'm now obsessed with this mantra. Thank you, Todd. I'm glad I stopped to listen in today. Joy.
Oh, awesome, Joy. Thanks for replying. And yeah, and it's amazing how simple yet powerful that is. So, and what's cool when I'm meeting with my clients, Scott, I mean, I meet with kids as young as fifth grade, fourth grade,
Mm,
and I meet with people as old as 60 and 70 years old. You know, if I can teach the very same thing I am to my older clients that I am my younger clients, it's pretty
mhm.
amazing how simplicity is the key. So
Right.
yeah.
It is, right, it is, right, and getting something that we can remember and do that. So the first thing is recognizing, refusing, and replacing, what I mean? So we have that, and you had that, you showed it out where your client Scott had, like, written out his
Yep.
recognizing that, and
Yep.
then what his replacement was, right?
Yep.
So what's the next step? We talked about the long haul and doing this. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I actually decided, but the first time I originally wrote down all my affirmations and all the places that I wanted to go in the world was just over 2 years ago. And I decided this morning that I was going to rewrite those immediately following the show. I was going to really dig in and rewrite this because things have changed, right? Where COVID is, and there was no Modern Longevitarian live show, 2.5 years ago, or
Right.
even 2.5 months ago. There wasn't even that, right?
Sure.
It's like,
Sure.
those things, even though I've owned the domain for 9 years now, next month will be 9 years.
Awesome.
And it's, so writing those things. So what's like, how does somebody become the tortoise in this tortoise and the hare version of life and really set out for the long run? Because like when you
Oh,
break an
man.
addiction or you know, those
Yeah.
things, how do you do that? This is the key to this, I
Yeah.
think.
I love it, man. I'm so excited you asked that question because I'll tell you, and I want to make it clear to your listeners really quick before I share this. Everything that I teach my clients, everything that I'm talking about, I've learned from someone else who's
Mhm.
been there, gone through it. So I give credit to those mentors in my past and my mentors even today. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm the guy that's got all the answers and I know everything. And no, I've just listened and then I apply.
Mhm.
And then when I apply, I can look you in the eye and say, I know for a fact this works. Why? Because I did what this person told me to do. Right.
Right.
So I give credit to people who have gone before me. And so I just want to make that clear. And with that said, the credit that I'm going to share with you now is from a really good friend of mine named Scott Sorensen. Excuse
Mhm.
me, Zach Sorensen.
Right.
I got Scott on my mind.
Scott on the mind, right? Yeah, Scott.
Zach Sorensen, I apologize. Zach Sorensen is the mental performance coach for the Atlanta Braves.
Mhm.
And I just happened to have him on my podcast recently, and he shared this with me. And I thought, wow, this was so powerful. And what he did is so talk about the longevity. I would ask your listeners this question. And again, I'm giving credit to Zach. Here's the question. Would you be willing to give 1% more a day working on you if it meant in the next 6 months you would be more confident, anxiety and depression would subside, you would feel more secure, you'd feel more connected, your relationships would improve, and you would wake up in a good mood? Would you be willing to give 1%? And I would imagine your listeners, and when I do this in a group, everyone goes, oh, yeah.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
here's what 1% looks like. 1% of your day is 14 minutes and 24 seconds.
Mm.
That's
Right.
it. So if you're willing to go for 14 minutes and 24 seconds on a daily basis, do something to work on your belief system, I guarantee you in 6 months' time, just like I said, you'll be more confident, you'll feel more love, you'll feel more connected, your relationships will improve if you'll
Mm.
give that 1%. So, for instance, that example I was giving you of the other Scott who, he started
Right.
changing that narrative. He would sit in the mirror 400 times a day. Think about that. And say those affirmations over and over and over. And he did it every day for a year.
Mm.
And it took less than 14 minutes. So think about it. That's less than 1% of your day. But
Right.
he put in that effort. And because of that, this guy now has been clean off of heroin. Scott that I referred
Mhm.
to, he's been clean now going on 6 years.
Wow.
He's definitely not perfect, but he's more confident. He would tell you he's more confident. He's got more love. He feels more connected. His relationships have improved. He wakes up consistently in a good mood
Mhm.
because he changed the belief system through repetition. Again, repetition deepens that impression, right? And
Right.
so if you listeners are listening to this right now, if you can give yourself 1% effort on a daily basis, that's 14 minutes and 24 seconds. If you want to give more, that's beautiful. But I'll tell you, think about that. We all can do 1%. And I'll tell you, you do that consistently over the next 6 months, it will change your life in ways that you can't even imagine. And
Mm.
so that's how you get through that long haul, because we can always say, can I do 1% today? Absolutely. If I
Right.
said, can you give 50%? We might go, whoa, that's a
Whoa.
little too much. I don't know if I can handle that. That feels overwhelming. But we all can do 1%.
Right. So,
Yeah.
like for instance, a year ago, at the beginning of the month, so December a year ago, I started doing transcendental meditation, and that's 15, 20 minutes twice a day. Right now, I had, you know, played
2%.
around with different types of meditation, the Headspace app and the 10% Happier app, and whatever I could find for free on YouTube, or Deepak Chopra's doing something, or something like that, right? But I go and I pay for this training, 4-day training, and do that. And you can count on one hand how many times I've missed it in the morning, in this, going on 13 months now.
Yeah.
And that's 15 to 20 minutes a day. And And it's funny because when you go back to a lot of people, and this is trending, even I just saw this is on LinkedIn as a course, Miracle Mornings by Hal Elrod, right? And I don't know if you've seen that or not, but there's he
Mm,
basically has a acronym for all the things in a morning routine that he put together that all the most successful people in the world done. So silence is savers, right? So savers, SAVERS,
mhm.
and so silence would be the meditation time, and then A is affirmations, right? Right. And so
Yep.
this is what we're talking about, right? We're talking
Yeah.
about the most successful people in the world over history have spent time every morning to do an affirmation, right? And you're
Yeah.
saying, I mean, you could round it up to 15 minutes, right? But 14 minutes and 24 seconds,
It's 1%
right?
of your day.
1% of your day, right? It's like absolutely
Yeah.
an amazing thing. I'm getting chills again, Todd. I don't know what you're doing to me. I mean, it is Park City and it was 16 degrees last night, but
Yeah.
it's like the heat is on, right? But
Sure.
it's an amazing thing when you put that together. Because if somebody's like going, how do I put this together? How do I have time for, like to do this in the morning or at night or
Exactly.
twice a day or those type of things? It really breaks it down and going, it's like, okay, I don't know, maybe you alternate if you get up late or something, or, don't want to make the extra time to get up 15 minutes earlier, even like alternate with your meditation or
Yeah.
something, right? Or
Yeah.
find a time to do it, right? Or do it before you go
Well,
to bed
yeah.
as you're laying in bed.
Yeah, if you miss it in the morning, do it at lunch. If you miss it at lunch, do it at night. I mean, again, morning's probably ideal because it kinda sets the tone for the day.
Mhm.
You probably heard this before, you win the first hour of the day, you win the day.
Yep.
So let's win that first hour, man. Let's do that, and then the rest of the day, you've won it, man, you
Right.
know? And so and I'll just add to the reason why we do these things, the reason why I'm saying these things, because waking up in a good mood, waking up happy, that should be our goal, right? And then everything you do on top of that is just kind of like, a blessing on top of all of that. But because you can have all the things in the world, and if you're waking up miserable, what's the point, right?
Right.
So if you can figure out waking up in a better mood, happy, consistently, you won't wake up always in a good mood because we're human. But if we can do this, right? And Gary V talks a lot about this, man. He's always talking about this. This should be our goal, waking up in a good mood. And I had a mentor tell me this, 30 years ago. And I looked at him like, well, duh, yeah, I get that. But then how do I actually make that happen? And so these are a few things that we've already talked about, changing that narrative that can help us in that direction.
Well, here's the wildest thing is that, as we're waking up, and I heard this from Joe Dispenza just a couple of weeks ago, as we're waking up, our operating system comes online, right?
Right. Mhm.
It's like we're coming from the subconscious to the conscious, and we're like stuck in the middle. And then you actually can decide who you are that day as you're coming to the conscious realm of the day as you're waking up.
Yeah,
And that opened my eyes. It's like, wait a minute, I can decide to be joyful today, right? And I can decide that today is going to be easy and fun, and instead of hard and unhappy and angry and all of those things. You're like, wait a minute, you can decide that, and you can
yeah,
decide that you're going to give positive affirmations to your kids or your coworkers or your employees or those type of things versus like going around looking for all the things they did wrong,
for
right?
sure,
And
for
and
sure.
so it's super super powerful stuff. Let's see. Joy came in with another comment. She said, "Acknowledge, accept, and apply."
Yep,
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's beautiful. Yeah, and again, I think what we need to do is when we can simplify things, we'll realize how powerful that simplicity really is.
mm,
Right? Because I think what we do as human beings, we like to overcomplicate everything. I work with a lot of clients in the addiction world, right?
mhm.
And they come in, they've blown up their lives and they're looking for this gigantic answer. And when I simplify it for them, they look at me like, what? That's all I've got to do? I'm like, yes, that's it. Right. And so we're always trying to look sometimes beyond the mark. We're looking way over, like, no, it's got to be something bigger. When in reality, no, it's really as simple as, you know, acknowledge, accept, apply. I love that. It's beautiful. Thanks, Joy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, what people may not realize is that, the law of attraction, like I want to make $1 million or be a millionaire or those type of things is a secondary law, where the law of vibration is a primary law. You put this vibration out into the world. Like, for instance, um, have you ever thought of it, somebody think, like, hey, I need to reach out to so-and-so, and all of a sudden 3 minutes later you get a text message from them, right?
Yeah,
It's like you put that vibration out in the
for
world. But
sure.
what happens is you're putting this vibration out into the world that, like I am strong. I am a good son. I am good enough, right? I was born enough, all those things. And it's like, it changes the way you stand. It changes the way you walk. It changes the way you interact with people, in those ways. So you start drawing these different interactions to you because this is a reflective universe. What you put out will actually come back to you.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So I just want to recognize you and say thank you for being other people's Roger Bannister. You know,
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah,
that-
thank you.
because your story is that for them in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we go through things for a reason. I think life happens for us, not to us.
Mhm.
And I think, those who might be listening to this who are struggling or who have struggled or they know someone who's going through a hard time, I think we go through these things, unfortunately, at times, but I think it's important because I think it wakes us up to the greatness that's inside us.
Mhm.
I think every one of us has greatness in us. And I think sometimes we don't recognize it until we go through something very difficult. And then when we do, like JC Dugard, I mean, here she is helping millions of women all over the world with her foundation. She never would be in that position had she not gone through that hell she went through. You know,
Right.
I always say this to my clients, if I could go back to my addiction and say something to it, like I would walk up to it and I'd say, thank you. And I'd say, you want to know why? And they'd say, why? And I go, because I'm talking to you today.
Mhm.
And so, Scott, I'm grateful that I've been through what I've been through, that I have this wonderful opportunity to be on your show today and share hopefully some insights that have been helpful for not only you, but for some of your listeners as well. And I want to thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And I love what you're doing. And I'm just glad to be a part of it today with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I will say this, that, you know, pillar number one is mindset. And that is the key to, you know, living your best life, whether it's, at work or at home, or, your health, whether it's, extending your health span or your lifespan. And I've been through a lot, right? When it comes to health, and one of the reasons I'm doing this is to carry on to be, other people's Roger Bannister. Like I just
Right.
did Sunday, I finished up a 14-day candida cleanse,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, and
That's awesome.
you would think that someone who's been doing this as long as I have would have already eradicated candida, but I've got a rash over my entire body right
Wow.
now, and I'm itching. Like, you can see red splotches on my
Yeah, I
neck,
noticed a
stuff
few
like
red
that.
spots
Yeah,
there.
yeah. And
Oh,
the thing is that, and I did a show on that last Wednesday about, being in the middle of it. And I've got pictures and all this stuff that happened. My face broke out, and those type of things. And I guess luckily that we had the Christmas holiday, that I wasn't doing live shows in the, right
right.
in the
Yeah,
middle of, the very end of all that stuff. It was going down, but and it's like, because it is, I'm human, right? I
right.
started
For
out
sure.
with a microbiome and ate a really bad diet for different reasons, right?
Exactly.
And now it's like, here I am, you know, going through this, saying, "Hey, this is what this is my experience with this," and I'm able to broadcast it on this platform and do those things.
Yeah.
So Todd, where can people find you online?
Uh, Thank you for asking that. Online, my social media handles at TS Inspires. That's my handle on Instagram and Facebook. I have a website called toddsylvesterinspires.com. You can
Hmm.
check me out there and you can get more information about what I do there. And if you have any questions for me or whatever, you can shoot me an email and I'd be happy to answer, or DM me on any social media platform. And
Right,
obviously I'm on LinkedIn. That's where I met you, Scott, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. And so, yeah,
right.
reach out to me. I'd love to hear from your listeners.
Right, absolutely, and you also mentioned that you have a podcast, and what's the name of the podcast?
Yeah, call it a belief cast.
I believe cast.
Yes, call it a belief cast. You can find that on any platform as well. We just hit over 100,000 downloads, and we're trending on both Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. So you can look it up either there, but we're on every platform out there. So check that out. I've had some amazing guests on, and They're the ones that actually make the show, not me. And so yeah, that would be the best way to find me. Look it up that way.
Right. Absolutely. You've made this show, not me. This is, we talked yesterday, and you asked you for the elevator pitch that became the title of the show, the whole topic of the show. You've
Nice.
told the stories, and I hope I could just add a little flavor in here and there. We had a comment come in from Debbie Garcia, Debbie G. She is actually the founder of the Spirituality Gone Wild network that I'm a part of. And so,
Oh, right on.
yeah. And so she's been listening in the whole show, and thanks Debbie for listening. And it's,
Thanks,
it's been an amazing broadcast. So I'm gonna wrap this up right here. It's been an amazing show. And, this is episode number 54.
Awesome.
And I've yet to have a repeat guest. All right. But I do want to tell you that I'd love to have you back in the future when I get to the point of having people back again. And
please. Yeah, I would love it.
yeah.
And
yeah, thank you very much. That means a lot, and it's like I do 5 podcasts a week live, right?
That's awesome.
Is what I do. And
That's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. I normally have 3 guests a week. I do 2 solo shows. Tomorrow's show is going to be, is episode 55. And when we race go-karts, my dad and I, his number was 55. I raced 55. It's a big thing. So I'm going to attribute, tomorrow's show to my dad and the top 3 things I learned from him, and really kind of detail those things out.
That'll be cool.
And he's on Facebook, but I don't know if he'll ever listen to it or not. I don't think he's listened to any of my shows.
He might not. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that's tomorrow's show. And but thanks for being on show 54. Thank you for agreeing to come back in the future. And
absolutely. No, thanks for having me. And I look forward to re-listening to it, and I'll share this on my platforms as well. And again, I'm excited, and I love what you're doing, Scott. Keep up the great work.
Thank you very much. It really means a lot. So, all right, we're going to wrap this up here. It is time to roll the credits. And you know what? The working title of the show originally was called It's My Friday, because of the restaurant world. We work 7 days a week. Somebody's Friday was every day. And we weren't always off on Fridays. Most of us worked in. So if today's your Friday, I hope you have a great weekend. And it's time to roll the credits. Cheers.